So some of you may actually want to take me up on my suggestion to take action. And I'm going to make a simple illustration that we maybe not, it might not be simple. I'm going to make an illustration as to how it is that I feel there are all these different aspects of online safety and how one can be involved if you want to protect grandma. Oh, there's your grandma and your grandpa. Or a kid. They're all using the internet. Or a phone. And what's happening here? We have obviously, this is the front end of online harm. And I guess this is kind of better situated closer to them. But we have many other players here. Government. We also have the tech companies. What else do we have? We have educators. I guess those are situated over here. Then we have organizations that are non-governmental, maybe better situated. Let's put it over here. Then we have the people that invest. In tech companies, or I guess they could be also paying to lobby governments. And those could be advertisers. Let's see here. Those could be advertisers. Just investors. All right. So, how do all these things kind of fit together? And where is it that you think that you can support the best? So, if we kind of say, hey, actually, I'm going to do it with the I want to keep my grandparents safe online. Maybe we might, I don't know, educate grandparents or educate children before they get on these platforms. Maybe, but like not a lot of people are interested in education about being safe online. I can tell you from experience. But that's one aspect of like what needs support in this ecosystem of online safety. I forgot a big one. I can't believe I forgot. What one of one of the biggest threats. Let's also not forget about stuff like AI. Well, these are definitely stakeholders as well. They care about their own stuff. Mm, they're more appropriate over here, I think, because these guys traditionally don't know each other, but they definitely use technology to get to them. Then we need to think about why is it that someone would want to harm others, and what benefit is there for them to stop? But so grandma, grandpa, little kids, they don't want to be learning about these guys over here. Absolutely not. What they want to do is to go on YouTube and on social media to connect with family and friends. They want to not be lonely. They want to figure out the meaning of life. They want to connect. And that's one of the reasons, that's one of the ways that these guys will, that's one of the ways that they will exploit, is that they will exploit that desire for connection. Whether that's on dating apps, whether that's on social media in general, people just want to feel they want to feel belonged, they want to feel together, they want to feel connected, and generally that's the weakest part in the vulnerability link in the chain here. So I suggest that we can't just rely on education. We cannot rely on education or people to self-educate themselves. There's just way too many risks online. But education definitely needs to play a part here. What kind of a part? Maybe a small, insignificant part, like 1 to 5%. Let's say that just you wanting to educate yourself, me having been in this industry of seeing online harm for over 10 years now, this is something where I am still inexperienced learning about it on a daily basis. So how is grandma and mom and dad going to protect kid or grandparents or whatever? You can only do so much for education. But let's say, liberally speaking, 5% of the risk could be shouldered from education. Not a good strategy if you're just going to try and rely on education. But then the question turns to, oh, I'm going to put a restriction on the phone so my child can't do this or my child can't do that. And that is like a reasonable thing to try and, like, a parent, that's reasonable for them to think, oh, that's just the easiest way and pathway for me to protect my child, is prevent or to filter out what gets to my child. Bad idea, because there's always going to be a way around that stuff. And you can't oversee that child 100% of the time. You're definitely not overseeing your parents or grandparents 100% of the time. So to think that monitoring them from the risk from these guys is going to be an effective mechanism for preventing harm is absolutely silly, because the harm is always evolving. And then you need to consider that education is not that effective, because, again, the risk and harm is always evolving. And to suggest that that's where we prevent harm solely is a mistake. It's a mistake because in this cycle, we see a lot of parties here that have a stake here that aren't being addressed. So the tech company, when they put out a product, what is their role here? Obviously, you think that it plays a major role, and it does. Most of the risk comes from the tech side. The technology company has these relationships, have advertisers and investors that they're accountable to. The tech company needs to survive. It needs to provide for its shareholders. And therefore, they will do whatever they can to make money. And their money is over here. Not necessarily from the scammer, but it's generally they're part of the ecosystem. They're part of the technology ecosystem. So let's focus on what government's role is here. And government, for sure, plays a role and influences the technology. But that is also influenced by money and investment. Governments want tech companies to set up shop. They want these billionaires having 2,000 employees located in their state or in their jurisdiction. And that's fair. It creates jobs. And when we are preventing the harm, that is making money. That is keeping the investors happy when we're preventing the harm. But if there's no harm to prevent, that gets a different cycle here. But let's be reasonable. We're never going to eliminate harm altogether. What we're going to do is try and reduce risk. And how can we do that? All of these parties, stakeholders need to work together. Because if they're not, then it becomes a weak link in the chain. So how is it that you can support reducing the risk? Well, one way is to support the needs of the predator, whether this is a child predator, whether this is somebody that preys on grandmas or romance scammers. They're all predators. They're preying on somebody. So we provide support for them so that they don't rely on your grandma or kid to support themselves. But this is not looked upon very nicely in society. So, where can we start with the support for these people preying on people? Probably from government. Because if government is able to have these kinds of frameworks put in place so that technology companies have some kind of they have some kind of role in this situation, and they are identifying where, let's say, predators are living. Let's say that we have a big ecosystem of scammers. They're not going to be situated in all one place. And how does that scammer access these networks? Those are all different factors here, but government does play a role in supporting the needs of the scammer. And if we support the needs of the scammer or the predator, they will have less of a desire to scam or prey, in theory. And that's part of the risk model here. But supporting services for these people that want to prey, is the most looked down upon pathway and just generally disgusting thing to think in society. Nobody wants to support a scammer or a predator. Nobody. We see this in the types of money that are thrown around by government. For example, in the US, and this is just kind of from a stat from a couple years ago, and I'm kind of summarizing and not really going to do it much justice, but it was something to the tune of $3 billion or something humongous like this. I don't know if it was actually $3 billion. $3 billion a year is spent in the US housing child predators, or, let's say predators in general, housing them in jails and in society. But how much did the US government pay to prevent these people from harming people in the first place? The figure was something like 2 million. Apples and oranges. We are wanting to support, as society, as a government, we are wanting to support and house and feed people that have already harmed. And that is a huge issue. If you think logically about this, it makes absolutely more sense to put more resources into prevention, to prevent people from being harmed. It absolutely does. But in society, grandma, grandpa, parents, they don't want to spend government money. They don't want to spend it on supporting predators. They don't. But if you supported them, if you supported these nonprofits and charities that are doing good work in prevention of online harms, that takes government out of the equation or reduces the need for government to intervene here. But let's say that you're the average Joe Blow, and you're the average Joe Blow who is driving a muscle truck. Are you gonna want to support? Are you gonna want to support predators? No, absolutely not. You think that the only way that they should be supported is by putting the predator in that box. That's your mentality. That's your mentality. If you're, if your mentality is that this is the only solution, or let's make this fair, or that this is the only solution, what you're doing is you're supporting the predator in harming already, because the only way in society that you know about these people is because they've harmed. Does that make sense? Because like, if your only solution to this is, hey, predators, let us know in society, let us know that you're a predator before you've harmed anyone. Will you do that, please? Because we want to do this, or we want to do this. I think we're going to have the predators lined up around the block for that. They are never going to do that, because there is no incentive for a predator to come forward preventatively and stop themselves from preying. Nothing motivates them to do that. Not even, you could make the strongest laws in the land, people are still going to harm other people. So that's where we have buddy like the creep catchers, or Chris Hansen, or Creeper Hunter, come along and try and make an impact. And all this does is make these people angry, maybe scare these people. Does it cause them to go and educate themselves? Nope, not at all. Like, maybe they'll be educated to some degree. But like, the most important part here is actually taking action. Taking action and figuring out what it is that you actually want and support in society. Oops. So I think I have all the relevant stakeholders here now and all of the different pieces of the puzzle. But where is it that you think that you can support? So one way that we can proactively get these people to go and get support to reduce risk is by changing the laws. And I'll give you an example of one law that needs to go. In Ontario here, oops. In Ontario here, there is an act called the Child Family Service. Let me see here. The Child, Youth, and Family Services Act. Most people outside of family court won't ever know what this act is. But Section 125. Let's see here. Section 125. This puts an obligation to report people that may be suspected of being pedophiles. So if, for instance, in our scenario here, hey, I'm a predator. I'm going to the doctor. I am going to a doctor to go get help. Yay! Predators going to go get help. Of course, like that's not how it works. Most people don't want to go get help because there's no incentive for them to do that. So I'm trying to pull up an email. I need to censor something. I need to censor a few things here before I can put it up on screen. Can't be blasting people. Silly. So what I'm putting up on screen here is a response from all right, I think I have censored everything that needs to be censored. So, this is a response in 2017, whereas someone from our team was looking to contact the hospital that Ryan Jessup went to. So I went with Ryan Jessup, a predator who thought he was chatting with a little girl online. He went to the hospital, and you can see this in that episode, that the camera doesn't shut off. Ryan basically says, "Hey, I need help." And he's now motivated to go get help. But in the middle of him doing the intake, so I had suggested, hey, you ought to go to the hospital. And he wanted me to come along. And I said, the only condition is that I need to be able to film it. I'm a filmmaker. I need to document. And guess what? He goes to the hospital. I think I might have the audio. Maybe I think I have it. I think I have the audio of that interaction. Hmm. I know it exists somewhere. All right, so here is okay. So here's an excerpt from that conversation with a doctor. Now keep in mind, this is a doctor at the hospital. Oops. So this is a doctor at the hospital. And basically, we were looking to talk and get on camera their duty to report, which, as I said, is already found in the Child and Family Services Act. Where did that screen go? So I, as a filmmaker, already know about this duty to report. And before Jessup is getting treatment and talking to the intake person, the scene that's in this film, Shamed, this stupid ass documentary, the only part that they put in was the most irrelevant part. They wanted to make it about me trying to interject my own feelings. Like, that's not what was happening. What was happening was me wanting to have on record the hospital's duty to report because I knew what might happen. And sure enough, they went into the hospital. Ryan went into the hospital and says, I need help. And I'm trying to ask and get the hospital on record saying, what about your duty to report? Are you going to be obligated to call the police? And because of confidentiality, this is the doctor talking. So he says that spoke to the hospital attorney and that I do not have an obligation to report. Probably create liability for the hospital. So there are two specific situations where I'm obligated to call police. So it's all yours, all due respect. So the doctor, this is the doctor speaking. The doctor, before treating Ryan Jessup, and this was in the original video, but obviously, like the fucking goof Gallagher doesn't want you to see it. That I was concerned for Ryan's right for this section of legislation. So Ryan's presenting himself as a risk to children potentially, and the doctor says, "Oh, I went to the hospital. I went to the hospital attorney, and the hospital attorney said I do not have an obligation to report." And guess what they did? As soon as the camera turned off, as soon as I left, which was like hours into him being at the emergency room, as soon as I left, here am I'm going to support Ryan Jessup going to get help. And here he is at the hospital. And I'm trying to essentially get this man help and want to have them on record. And as soon as I leave, after they have told him that they're not going to report him, what did they do? They sure did They went to the police and they made a report. And this is the main reason why these predators will not go and get help, because they're afraid of being reported because of legislation like this. And there is this kind of legislation, a duty to report on licensed individuals across pretty much every jurisdiction in Ontario, or sorry, in North America. So even if you haven't harmed anybody, and Ryan, at that point, I wasn't aware that he had ever harmed anybody. But because he was going to say, I have this attraction, I haven't harmed anybody, but I have this attraction. This is what they used to justify them making a report to the police. So, this needs to go. We need doctors to be able to have discretion in who they report. It shouldn't be mandatory that they go and report everybody that says I'm attracted to a child, because then we will prevent predators. We will prevent them. Prevent them. Why do we want to prevent them in going to get help? That will only put these kids at risk. Sorry, kid. This stupid fucking policy needs to go. It needs to be rewritten so that we can actually have people, we can have a conducive environment for them to go get help, and they can be motivated to get help before they harm little Timmy or little Janie. So that is one humongous way that we can make change happen, is if we start telling the government, whether it's a letter writing campaign or whatnot, getting behind organizations that want to make change. They want to support change to pieces of legislation like this, so that predators can go get help and they can be motivated to get help. If it's mandatory that they're going to be reported, they're not going to go. That's just how it is. But then you're the guy driving the pickup truck and you're saying, oh, the only thing we should be doing is putting them in the box and putting them in the bars. Again, you're ignoring my first point, which is there's no motivation for us to be aware of them scamming or preying on people until after they've done it. And at that point, it's too late. Somebody's already been harmed. So, what can you do in this particular circumstance is support these organizations in making change, or tell the government, write letters, call your MPPs or your MPs or your congressmen or whatever. Let them know that you want to change this, that you want predators going to get help before they prey on people. And keep doing it. That is one major way. Doctors and therapists need to have discretion in who they report. It cannot be mandatory. Cannot. These organizations perhaps need to work with law firms that have the money so they can sue the government to change these. but can't do it alone, can't do it without your support. So if you want change to happen, this mentality needs to change. One other big way that you can make change is the technology that you support cannot be driven by money. Because if it's driven by money, then you're going to get a product that is harmful, that wants to keep people on their platform as long as possible, and that increases the risk. So you need to support better technology, support healthier socials, help them build safer technology. While you're on these platforms, also, you need to be reporting these people. Because most of the time when people get scammed, when people get preyed upon, they're ashamed of going to get help. So like improving resources so that these people aren't afraid to make reports, and they're not afraid to do some kind of action against the predators. So we need to be reporting them, but obviously that means that the technology company needs to see a benefit in taking some kind of action. And that's partially where the government can come in. But again, like, how does the government know what to do? Like, they don't, unless there's a problem and it's a gaping problem. And then they come up with an asinine solution, like the Canadian government has done with the online safety bill or online safety, I don't know what it's called. But technology, mandating technologies is a step in the right direction. And one of those technologies must be identity verification for all people on these platforms, so that if you're a predator and you want to be preying on people, if you have to do identity verification, that is a huge deterrent in going on these platforms to scam people. That reduces a lot of the risk. When's the last time you heard about a celebrity or somebody with a blue check mark on their profile going to scam others or asking little ones for bad images? Hardly ever happens, because those people act differently because they've been verified. So age verification is not strong enough. A little ticky box on a website saying I'm 18 is not enough. That is a joke. Age verification is one step further, but identity verification on all social media, on all platforms, needs to become the norm. And governments are doing this. We see this in Australia, in the UK. They are taking action and forcing these companies to do age verification, and identity verification is not in that. It's just not there. There's only one platform that I know of that is doing identity verification mandatory for all of its users. But if all the tech companies, if there's, all these tech companies, if all of them don't have to do it, then guess where people will go? People will go to the path of least resistance. But if it's mandatory for all tech companies to do identity or age verification properly, people will accept it for sure. So supporting age verification, or better yet, identity verification on all social media platforms is a mandatory thing. And these are just some of the ways that you can get involved and take action. But if you don't care, don't take any action, I guess. That's the moral of the story here.